in the chat if you're okay with us recording. We're now recording, looks like. Thank you. Thanks, Emma. So we've got a few people in now, and I think so we'll start with some of the more facilitated conversations that we were planning to have this afternoon. In the first email that I sent out to everyone, you should have received prior warning that we were going to ask you to contribute and share some of your experiences from this week. So we'll ask everyone, if you're comfortable to do so, to just either in the chat or ideally by telling us, respond to a few questions that we've got as prompts for reflection just to round the week off. So the first thing, which I've already alluded to slightly, was what have you learned about creativity this week? If anyone wants to jump in and answer, that would be lovely. I might look at Emma if Emma wants to start us off, or you can use the chat if you don't feel like you want to verbally tell us what you've learned. Silence. Emma, what have you learned about creativity this week?
Yeah, so one of my facilitative gurus always said, count to 19. And somebody will jump in with the to break the silence. So I'm going to jump in and break the silence. So I guess what I've learned this week about creativity is the need, well, my need, I guess, for being creative with others. And yeah, that kind of reliance on being in the face-to-face environment, sometimes particularly with the Creative HE meetups, I find I go away from those things with really, really high energy and loads of ideas. And what I've learned about my creativity this week is that I can still do those things on my own, but it doesn't feel the same until I've done the sharing bit. So I can do the creation of the Daft Hulk video or whatever it is, but until I feel like I've had a conversation about it, that conversation can be online or face to face, I guess I don't get my need fulfilled, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, it does. We've got some comments in the chat, and quite a few are around making time for creativity, as Sandra's mentioned that, and it has been mentioned a bit further up the chat as well. And I think, to me, that's something that's really struck home for me, because I feel like this week, having been immersed in it all week, my own creativity comes to the surface much more and feels much more, I suppose, validated. That's the right word. So things start to come a bit more naturally. So one of the things that I've been wanting to do for ages, because I lead our institutional scheme for HEA fellowship, I've been wanting to put together little videos about the UK PSF dimensions of practice. And finally this morning I've sat down and made a little video using Biteable for A1. I've done the first dimension, there's 15 of them, but rather than having to think about it and plan it, just came out. I just sat down, looked at the website, and suddenly I had a video about 10 minutes later. So I think that's that immersion. And someone's mentioned as well, having a creativity buddy, and sort of you were saying about that social aspect of creativity and the connectedness and how important that is. I think being surrounded by people who are also willing to be creative and give it a go.
Rochelle, I don't know if you want to say more about your creative problem solving. And
yes, what Rochelle, please do. Yeah.
You might have had to count to 19 there while I figured out how to turn my microphone back on. Sorry about that. So I quite often find myself in situations where I'm under pressure, shall we say, and I always sort of worry that in that situation I won't be able to perform. And what I've kind of realised this week is that in a situation where I'm under pressure, I will sometimes do something a bit out of the ordinary and creative to figure out a way through the problem that I'm having. And that's not always a bad thing, because the things that I end up with are usually better than something I could have planned. And that's not to say that I want to work like that all the time, because it's stressful. But it's nice to know that I can do it. And I guess, yeah, that creative problem solving has shown me that you can if you think outside the box. I'd like to figure out a way to do that more often with less stress. I think that's a learning I need for the future. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm just keeping an eye on the chat as well. I think that's probably something we can all relate to as well, Rochelle, that sometimes we're forced into a corner where we have to be creative, and it's working out how to capture that creative impulse and harness it for good, so that it's not something that only appears when we're under pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just having a quick look at Chrissy's asked an interesting question. Chrissy says, what if we don't have time? So a few people talked about making time. What if we don't have time? And I suppose as a follow-up question to that, this week has been about making the time for creativity, and it's something that I think we've all done this week, but how do you maintain that or sustain it when we go back to normal life, normal time pressures? Oh, what normal? Yes, I know, Chrissy, what normal? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to come in audio here. It's Julia.
Right, Julia.
I was going to say in response to that, and I think that definitely when my module will be due to run again. Well, who knows actually when my module will be due to run again. It may be sooner than I expect, but anticipated it will be again March next year. But definitely that you can incorporate a lot of this kind of digital learning that we've had to use in a flipped classroom kind of way, and very much use the face-to-face if we have it more constructively. I think that's what I've probably take away from this, that I'll be much more comfortable on putting up those materials and presenting materials virtually first for them to look through, and then to come into the classroom and discuss them. Definitely.
Thanks, Julia. Just having a look in the chat. We've got a comment there about the importance again of finding that community and that connectedness, and the idea that there are people that talk about playful learning in the way that you understand, and how that feels after fighting against the institution for so long. And I'd say that's absolutely what we're here for. That's absolutely the purpose of the community, is to provide that space where we are a community of like-minded people who do all feel that way about adopting creative approaches and understand that struggle as well. And making time isn't an addition but a necessity to make that work. Ooh, the question of workload. I'm staying well clear of that. Webinars.
Stella, that might be something that you really want to look at influencing. I think that some of these comments really raise an issue for me in terms of perceptions of creativity and perceptions of playful learning. I think somebody else posted around playful learning. Feel free to jump in and expand on your posts, by the way. But something that really strikes me within this community is about helping each other feel and know for certain that creativity is a good way of facilitating learning. And actually being around other people that feel like that gives me the nerve to push those boundaries even further. And to push back against some systems and processes, because I feel like I've got some people that have got my back, and I think that that's really important for us kind of moving forward. If we want to change the way that education happens in HE and FE, then we need these people to be able to stand up and say, this is what we believe in. This is the approach that we believe in.
Yeah, and I think, Hannah, you've got some really good examples of experiencing that in your institution, haven't you? That sort of sense of it's just play and having to push back against that. Sorry, I put you on the spot a little bit there.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I think like you were saying, it's getting everybody else to have that understanding that creativity is more than, it's much wider than just because we're, you know, we teach on an early years course, that it's just play with children, you know, that it's much wider than that. It's all the things we've talked about this week. How we express ourselves in lots of different forms of expression, not just play that's centered with children.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know it's something that you experience particularly acutely, isn't it, Hannah, because of the subject that you teach.
Yeah.
But I think we've probably all of us come across that in our practice to some extent or another. And I think what Emma says is absolutely right. It's about having the confidence to stick to your guns and know that what you're doing is appropriate and effective. Rochelle's asked, have we got any, Emma, have you got any tips for finding those like-minded people who will have your back?
Just talk to people would be my view. I think finding some people in your institution is helpful, but if you can't find anybody inside your institution, then look at that kind of wider network, and having the regular check-ins with those people, even if it's not specifically around creating an activity, for example. I think that immersion thing for me is also about immersion around other people. I get a lot of energy from being around other people anyway. That's who I am naturally. So I try and surround myself with people that are going to support me, but also going to challenge my thinking and get me to push that little bit further. So I think you want that little bit of similarity in terms of like-mindedness, but you also want to kind of attract that diversity of thinking as well, because that'll help you make leaps in your own practice.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really great advice.
Paul, I don't know if you want to come in and say something about the dreaded module and program specs and how we can change that.
It's just that I've never. Hello, everyone. It's just we make great play of words like play and fun. Which are really important, and I've never yet seen them in any module spec. And I just think we are afraid of words like that because we think they won't get through validation or they'll be laughed out of court. I mean, there's a few examples around which things like the words like adventures. I've seen we have a series of modules which were adventures, so it's possible, and I think we self-censor ourselves sometimes. More importantly, I think we say, "Oh, we can't put that in because that would just get laughed out of court." But when you do put it in, people go, "Oh, that's a good idea. Why? Yeah, we should do more of it."
Yeah, so exactly. So it takes a few people to just take those little steps, and then somebody else will see it. I'd be interested to see. So there's the professor of Lego in Cambridge now, isn't there? Is it Oxford or Cambridge? Cambridge, I think. And I'd be interested to delve into some of the modules that he or she looks at to see what kind of words that they're using. It'd be interesting to see how much of that elasticity of language we can use to stretch the boundaries of the module and program specs, particularly in things like professional programs where you're not just validating within your institution but also for a professional organisation. Be really interesting.
Yeah. So interesting comment there about spending 2 years to put playfulness and creativity into the module documentation, but massive reluctance to act on it. I wonder if you'd be willing to tell us a little bit more about that.
So I'm sorry, you haven't got my video up. Apologies for that.
Okay.
The reason why is I was on a call to Australia from about 3 o'clock this morning, and I'm in bed, so I'm hiding my lack of professionalism here. Yeah, so I'm really interested in the way that play and risk should exist, and it was agreed by the faculty that we, as a Faculty of Arts, we needed to have more of that playfulness and that creativity in the fundamental documents that we were using to create modules. But even though I proved it and I wrote it, actually when it went to our faculty education committees and university education committees, there was a fear, and that's the only word I can use, there was a proper fear that somehow by using those kind of words in documents that could be seen by QAA, that were also being subject to, so I was working in Faculty of Arts, but so some of my STEM colleagues, they felt that it was not taking it seriously enough. It wasn't rigorous enough. Whereas actually, I'd say the opposite, you know, and there's lots of writing on the benefits of what we could call artistic rigor. But there was this fundamental reluctance, even from my colleagues who live and breathe it. And that's something that I'm working on at the moment, trying to find an answer to. So I'd love anyone's thoughts if they think, you know, there's a way of getting around that. Because sorry, I've forgotten your name. Was it Paul, the previous speaker? Yeah. Didn't want to get that wrong. But how you can enable, how you can empower someone to use these words which are less obviously academies, you know, that horrible language we all speak. So something which is can be reciprocated. And I mean, students do the most amazing things when you get rid of those those barriers. I mean, it's almost like we talk about inclusivity, and one of the best ways of being inclusive is giving us permission to be playful. But then we take it away when we actually write the documentation for ourselves. It's really difficult.
If I can come in, it's Paul again. It is difficult. I was recently at a validation event as the external validator. It was a really, really interesting, innovative course in music and music improvisation. But the problem is with the way we sort of validation panels are often formed, is that the validation panels are the chair and the internal are from completely different disciplines. So in this case, I was talking about music improvisation, and we had someone from business studies and engineering, and it was a complete clash of mindsets and cultures. In the end, we managed to persuade them that the ideas for the course. I mean, the course was essentially 3 modules, which were thinking, being, and becoming. And you could see them look and say, what on earth do they mean? But once they explained, once they'd understood what they meant, they were very happy with it. So if I hadn't been there, I doubt it would have gone through. I mean, that's not saying anything about me, but it's because I understand the discipline. I was able to explain as an external. So I think the way panels are put together, and particularly having an external, whoever your external is, I think that could be really important and really influential in being able to persuade people that the ideas on the table in the documents are really good ideas.
Yeah, I think that point about persuasion and influence is a really important one. So I remember doing the validation for one of the new programs, and it's experiential course. So as a group, the course leaders and decided to make the validation into an experiential opportunity. So designed it as kind of an interactive poster exhibition rather than a sit down, listen to people talk type validation. And when we had the kind of practice validation exercise, I remember having a couple of corridor conversations with some quite senior people who were wobbling and going, I'm not sure we can do this because it's different. And I remember having the conversation and saying, well, do we want anything to change or not? Because if we want things to change, then we need to try and change it from the start. And eventually it went ahead, and the validation panel actually came back and said that they really enjoyed the experience, which I don't think many people enjoy validation experiences. But that kind of idea of needing to influence and say, well, actually, we do need to take these risks if we want things to change. And then being able to kind of follow that through, I think is really helpful. And if each of us can take a little bit of that influence, then the sector will shift gradually, hopefully.
Julia, if you're still with us, do you want to tell us a bit more about that module, The Art of Nursing? Because I think that's a really, really good example of how creativity can be written into a module and accepted as part of a very, very structured programme like nursing.
Yes, I will. I was just replying to the comment actually about learning more about the module. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore because of the new curriculum that we've had to develop in response to the new standards, the NMC, and it was an optional module, so nurses could choose, third year student nurses could choose to do it if they want. But the whole assessment was a creative piece. There was a 1,000-word written piece as well in support of it, but 50% was a creative piece, and they could use any types of kind of media that they wanted to use. So, and it was about, they had to explore a theme in nursing and kind of back up nursing theory. So it had real academic links to it. But some of the pieces that were created were absolutely amazing over the years. So we had somebody who was from mental health nursing who had a mannequin head, which they decorated, and then this head opened up, and inside we could see what was going on inside, kind of the turmoil inside that person through, and it was explaining a theory of nursing. We had somebody that did a stop-start animation of a rabbit being chased by a fox, and then the rabbit ended up in a cage, which represented, again, it was mental health nursing. This rabbit was the patient and managing to, and the mental health was the fox, depicted by the fox, and the nurse was the cage, helping to protect the rabbit and live with mental health. It might not go away, but it was stop-start animation, which was just fantastic. People developed board games as a creative piece. We had sculptures, a whole variety of things, and because they had to explain every aspect and why they chose this particular way of they had to explain every single component, essentially, from every drawing or material they used, colours they chose, and what it represented. They developed some really good critical analysis within their assessment. And this is very ad hoc because there was never any research done and the numbers were quite small. But looking back, the students that performed really well, and some of them got very high marks, were often students who weren't performing so well in the rest of their academic topics, but came up, but produced some really fantastic pieces of work for their assessment in the art of nursing.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Julia. It was an amazing module. It was fantastic.
It's a shame it's gone.
Should we move on to the next sort of the follow-up question? Because I'm keeping an eye at the time, and we've done sort of 50 minutes already.
Yeah, so I think that we've looked a bit at what we've learned about creativity, and also within those conversations, we've actually that's led to what you've learned about yourself and what you need in terms of your creativity. So I think one thing that we wanted to ask each of you to do was to share one thing, either one moment or one activity or one conversation that you've had as part of the jam that it will in some way impact your practice. So what one thing are you going to take away from this jam? I'm going to throw it back at you, Anna, and say, you want to start?
What will I take away? Oh gosh. Well, I've already got my little video that I made this morning. So I've got my little video that I'll take away. I think it's been really an experience. I mean, you know, I feel very connected to the community most of the time anyway, but really that immersive experience that I was talking about this week has been that reflecting on my own creativity and reflecting on my work and how that creativity comes out sometimes in things that I'm not expecting. And so the thing that I will take away, in addition to my video, which is a sort of a concrete artifact that I have to show for it, is trying to surface a bit more of that awareness of my own creativity.
Great, Fab. And Diane, you've said around the podcast, and you've clearly got very concrete plans to make that happen, already making it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Having recorded 2 already. I think I've been quite fortunate this week where I thought I was going to be marking, but I didn't get allocated any marking last week. So actually I've not got my assignment for PG Cap hanging over my head, and so I've kind of had a little bit of space to think. So actually it's been a really good week, you know, being influenced and actually acting on it. And I've actually started to think a little bit more about, you know, other creative ideas. I was reading something about teachers using TikTok for micro teachers, and TikTok is something that lots of students are using, even, you know, mature students, obviously for entertainment purposes. So I've started to delve into that a little bit as well, you know, doing a bit more reading around, and like you said, putting the feelers out and getting other people on board I think is really important, and obviously then sharing that kind of you know, stuff that you've created or any ideas that we've got. So I'm thinking more around, like, say, skills, you know, so I'm kind of exploring it a little bit with, I've emailed Chris Melia to look at, you know, the security around using that kind of platform, using a platform that people are already using rather than introducing something else. So yes, I've had a really good week of creative thinking, really. I've been quite fortunate. What next week will look like with all the marking coming in, I don't know, but we'll see. But yeah, it's been brilliant, thank you.
Oh, that's fab, thanks. Stella or Sandra, do you want to talk about how you might use the fortune tellers? What are your plans for that?
My plan is we are doing a learning and teaching conference on embodied activities for virtual induction. So that would definitely be one of the ask our participants to make, and get them to write questions either that they want to ask each other as staff, or that they might envisage their students asking each other.
Yeah, fantastic. Julia, what kind of new things are you going to try? Have you now got the courage to have a go at?
Hello, sorry, I was just writing there. I don't know where it came from. I think it was somebody just talking and the word articulate, and it might have been when you were doing your fortune teller or something, and I suddenly remembered the board game Articulate, and I know that we like to develop board games. I thought that might actually be a really good way of trying to get some nursing concepts, and they have to describe it without saying so many words, and trying to get them talking about different topics and themes within nursing. So I just thought that might be quite nice, immersive, creative way to develop a session. again, in quite a structured programme and introduce some creativity.
Articulate will work really well.
Yeah, I think so.
I've done A&P Pictionary before now, so Anatomy and Physiology Pictionary as well, which is quite fun. That would be good. Mare, I think we've got a comment from you, Mare, around disruption. I don't know if you want to expand on that. Tell us more.
Hello, it's Maya, by the way.
Oh, sorry, Maya.
It's okay, don't worry. So I'm an MA student, and but I've been a teacher for many, many years. So I'm coming at this slightly differently because I've been a secondary school teacher, but I am looking at using these ideas a lot, and all the way back when one of the sessions where you had somebody talking about their PhD and using a lot of photos and getting people to talk in different ways, like going for a walk or using the photos and things like that. So these ideas for me have been a bit sort of slower in their bubbling and kind of built up, so that now I've decided for my dissertation I'm going to interview narrative inquiry, head teachers, and look at how they've used creative projects to support disadvantaged students during lockdown. So I'm going to ask them to use photographs as well to help them explain and really look at the creative aspect of it, and hopefully some creative activism as well. It really interests me. So yeah, thank you to everyone for sharing their ideas. It's been really helpful process trying to work out which aspect of creativity I was going to look at and how I could bring it all together. Yeah, and I've made loads of notes on everything you're saying. So thank you, everyone. That's great.
Fabulous. Hannah, I don't know if you want to come in there in terms of your study.
Yes, I think it was mine that you were referring to, the session that we did. Feels like forever ago now, but it was at the beginning of lockdown, wasn't it? Where I was talking about ideas for my PhD. I'm in the first year at the minute, but I was talking about walk-in interviews and using photography and objects. And naturally, in the talking about things that I'm realising I'd really like to carry on and do with the students as well. So things like sharing photographs of, of nature, of objects, using objects to represent theories. I thought that was brilliant in the jam last week, where there was models, representing theories, things like that. Using, like I've just put there, I was a little bit worried going into the lockdown period and thinking of the prospect of teaching online, that the creativity element of the teaching would start to get lost. But actually this week, really thinking about all the different possibilities, I don't think anything will be lost. If anything, it's just opened up a whole new world of possibilities, which is quite exciting. And it's nice to be in this environment, chats such as today and all the things that we've been sharing over the week, just to help me realise that. Because at first I did have that worry that even for my research, I actually sat and thought, am I going to be able to do that? Am I going to be able to do walk-in interviews if I can't walk with a person? Because I'm not allowed to. What will I do? But actually, there is always ways. You just have to take that time to think about what the different ways could be.
Fabulous. Thanks, Hannah. I can't wait to see your house gymnastics. Interesting.
That's on my list of things. I'll send some photos when we do that.
Good stuff. Portia, I don't know if you want to talk to us more. This sounds really interesting. Loving the time of COVID.
Okay. Yes, so I'm giving a paper tomorrow talking about love in the time of COVID, which is a riff off Marquez's book, Love in the Time of Cholera. And I'm looking at the idea of playful love as one of the key things, along with Arao and Clemen's ideas of brave spaces rather than safe spaces. It's, I mean, I'm specifically using autoethnographic considerations that I've been doing during lockdown as kind of my key resource for the paper. And last Friday's Creative Jam was just so inspiring. It was such a I felt really privileged to be part of it, actually. It was like finding your tribe, where you're like, oh, these are people who understand what I'm talking about, rather than having to explain why playful is important, why creative is important. So yeah, I will be mentioning Creative Jam quite a lot, but I think the freedom that it gives, that kind of permission that you're giving yourself again, was really useful. So I've been doing quite a lot of boundaried poetry writing. I don't know if anyone's come across it. So you give yourself a specific number of syllables or words or a particular form. So I've been using the 3-word lines, 9 lines. That's all you're allowed to do. So it's quite a small number of words, whatever that is, 27 words, and choosing an intent and just going with it. And the meeting I had this morning was with a group called Departing Radically from Academic Writing, DRAW, which is amazing, and works out of Queensland. And they had a gatekeeping policy. You had to provide a poem before they'd let you in, which was quite fun, kind of enforced creativity. So I think there's something about that kind of, that ability to go, I'm creating, but it doesn't have to be good, because honestly, my 27-word poems are quite often bloody awful. Sorry, excuse my language. Or usually, I mean, I'm not a poet. I love writing poetry, but it's not my first discipline. And actually giving yourself that permission to be creative without it having to be good has been something I've really got out of this recently.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely essential, Portia. I think, that notion of being able to be creative without self-limiting or without self-criticizing. I think it goes back to a little bit what Norman was saying last week about, or rather the conversation we were having around Norman's presentation last week about the necessity of being able to assess and grade creativity within learning. I'm particularly thinking it was my son's birthday last weekend, so I made him a birthday cake, and normally a friend of my mother-in-law's makes these really elaborate, beautiful cakes, and I love baking, but I can't make it pretty, or very rarely can I make it pretty. And so I kept having to remind myself that he would be just so happy that I've made him a Biscoff birthday cake, that it won't matter if it doesn't look like the blog that I'd got it from. It's the getting started in the creating something that's more important. And I think more relevantly, that's something I feel in my teaching quite a lot, is that I have loads of ideas for things that I want to do creatively, but then I struggle to get started because I worry that I won't do it well enough, or that people will see through it and see it as a gimmick. I've had people in class tell me that my teaching strategies are cringe before, and that's always there in the back of your mind. And I think just overcoming that by reassuring yourself that it doesn't have to be great, but just do something is a really good mantra.
I think I gave the example once in one of our meetings of a session with my students in which I encouraged them to make a 3D model, and it's about their journey towards higher education. And in the group last year, one of the students had started to make a roller coaster. And it was quite impressive, actually. She'd stuck it all together with string and all different parts, and then it happened to it fell down. It collapsed in the middle, and she put it to one side of the room and left it there. And I happened to notice it was there, and she started doing something else. And I said, "Oh, what happened to your model?" And she said, "No, it's gone wrong." A little bit like we're talking about here. "No, it's gone wrong. It doesn't look right." And I said, "What were you making?" And she said, "Oh, it was a roller coaster. It was supposed to be about my life that's been a bit of a roller coaster here and there and everywhere. I said, yeah, but look at it now. You know, now actually, even though it doesn't have to look like a perfect roller coaster, is that not what a roller coaster would be like? You know, it's maybe not what you expected to start with, but actually it's got another meaning now. And she stopped and looked at it and thought, actually, yeah, it really does. You know, so she came back to it, and it to look at it, you would just think, what actually is that? It looked like a lot of, you know, string collapsed on a piece of card. But when she explained it, when we did the session with everybody as a group, it was so powerful, the story. So I really, you know, I'm passionate about, you know, being able to be creative, but not worrying about the end product, and sometimes taking a step back, looking at it in a different way. And for that student, it was a powerful moment. And then when she came to write her assignment for the module, I'm pretty certain the first line of it was something like, "My life has been a roller coaster." And I thought, wow, that's, you know, it's meant something to her, that experience. I can probably find a photo to I'll post the photo of it on Twitter so you can see.
Yeah, you should. I think that question of process over product is really important one, and I think there's been quite a lot of chat around the resistance, the personal resistance to start something if it's not going to be that perfect, or I'm no good at drawing, therefore I'm not creative. And finding your own creative niche, I think that's kind of congruent with who you are is really useful. So for me, that's kind of photography and digital art, that kind of creation of using kind of digital media like Canva, I really enjoy doing. And they I think that kind of perception of what is perfect is something that is probably in our own heads rather than in anybody else's heads.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's core for me is this idea of giving yourself permission, and it applies in lots of different avenues, lots of different ways. But you know, being a bit kinder to yourself when really what we're trying to do is for the good of our learners and to improve our practice.
Yeah, and if we're not congruent in terms of supporting other educationalists and saying, look, I'm nervous about this session, then we can't expect others to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous. So thank you for sharing your one things. Feel free, if anybody wants to say anything else, do jump in.
Portia's just shared her poem in the chat, so if anyone wants to go and have a look at the chat and read Portia's poem.
Please be kind, please be kind.
Would you like to read it to us, Portia? I'm going to challenge you.
Okay. Okay. So yes, this is the 9x3. Sorry, Chrissy, I would love to show me, but I'm in bed. So it goes: hell-bent conciliator, warrior brushing tears, broad-winged extrovert, bell-clanging introvert, perspectives ranged wide, moral compass brave, silver-lined cynic, polymath imposter expert, leaky, fleshy human.
Oh, that's fantastic. Feel free to turn your volume on, people, and give Portia a clap.
I love it. It's wonderful.
Incredible and very brave.
Yeah.
That comment that you made about brave spaces, I've written it down and circled it because it really hit a chord with me. I'll remember that, brave spaces.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down too. I've written down boundary poetry as well. Something that's just occurred to me actually. Some of you sort of within the community, you might be aware that we're as a community, we're editing a special edition of the Prism Journal called Our Creative Selves. and that's going to be coming out sometime over the summer. But I know from the submissions that I've seen, we've got one about the use of poetry as it's a, what's it called? It's a project where creative writing is used alongside students with alongside criminal or criminology, and it's about getting students who've had experiences of the criminal justice system to write poems as a way of exploring their experience of coming to university. And that's a fabulous, really exciting paper. And another one is about walking. Another one of the papers that I've been looking at for that is about walking as well. So keep an eye out for the Prism journal that's going to be coming out, that's been edited by the community sometime over the summer. And we are having quiet discussions about doing some more in the world of research and publications. So also bear us in mind or keep in touch if anyone's interested in going down that avenue with us. I'm clearly stumbling over my words now because it's exciting, but I want to make sure I say the right things as well.
Whatever happens, it'll be open and it'll be collaborative. So
that's what we do. Absolutely.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Still writing down brave spaces. Brave spaces.
So I think, mindful of time, I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to explore, or whether we give you the gift of a little bit of time this afternoon. What does everybody think?
The gift of my Tesco meal deal. I think for those that weren't here at the beginning, I was meditating on the new normal and saying that I bought myself a Tesco meal deal for my lunch, and it nearly brought me to tears because it was just such a little drop of normality. I was sort of in the big Tesco last night thinking about how normal it used to be to just whiz into, there's a Tesco Express practically in the middle of campus at UCLan, so it's very normal to just whiz in and grab a Tesco meal deal at lunchtime, and I've got one in the fridge and it nearly made me cry.
I had a pretty stressful day yesterday, so went and bought myself a Starbucks, and it's the first time since February, I think. Wow. Came home and poured it into a cup and scrubbed myself just in case, but even so, it was just, yeah, I get that, the like emotion of, oh my gosh, this is like what normal used to be, but also appreciating that these like little things that kind of give you a little bit of joy. Yeah, it's probably a good takeaway from this week as well.
It is, absolutely, yeah.
Fabulous. So what I've just posted a link there, and we'll email this out to you as well, but we'd really love to know how you found the whole experience of being part of the Jam this week. We really valued all of your contributions to the live sessions, to the Twitter conversations. It's been fantastic for us to be able to be part of that with you, but we'd really love to see what you thought anonymously about your experiences and how you think that we could go forward as a community together, what we could do.
Yeah. And if you are new to the community, and particularly if you're based in the northwest of England, that is where we have historically held most of our physical face-to-face sessions when we've been able to do so. I think this session that we've had today gives you a taster of what it's like to come to one of our Creative HE meetups, because typically we will sit around and talk about our experiences, give our war stories, talk about our ideas, share practice and support each other, and there's usually food of some sort as well. So we're not quite sure what the meetup schedule is going to look like for the next academic year, whether we're going to still be online, whether we will be able to get face to face, or whether we'll do a mixture of both so that we can carry on supporting and collaborating with people more widely than just in our immediate area. So I think Sandra's suggestion of having a dedicated hour or two once a month online sounds like a lovely idea, because I've really got a lot out of this week. Really, really have. So stay with us, because there's more of this to come. And who knows what next year's Jam will look like. It'll be a different flavour altogether.
Yeah, maybe we make jam.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to happen eventually. I've already put my marker out there that we need a food related, actually explore your teaching through the medium of food. That's what we're going to do next time we can physically get together. I promised Halle I was going to make the gluten-free
I think it has been
cake.
fascinating. It has been fascinating. I've switched on my video here and took the microphone. I hope you don't mind.
It's okay.
Yes, I mean, both of you have been phenomenal, I think, in coordinating the jam in a very different format and over so many days. The work that went into it is, I mean, we will never be able to repay you for that. It shows very, very strong commitment, not just to the jam itself, but also to the community and colleagues and students across. So thank you so, so much. About the jam making, I think it's an excellent idea. We do need to make at some point a lot of jam. So yes, good that you have brought in Halle, Anna, and we can discuss. Yes, the special issue that Anna mentioned earlier, because she's very humble. Anna is actually leading this, and it's important to mention. There are other colleagues as well. Emma is also involved, but Anna has been leading and is coordinating us all, trying to familiarize with the system, but we're almost done now. So she has been a great leader, not just a participant, but also a great leader. So thank you very much, Anna, for that as well, and everybody else. Wonderful to see so many colleagues here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Thanks, Chrissy. Okay. So I think I'm going to jump in and say I think we'll post a follow-up question on Twitter just to round everything off, just to give everyone the chance to tell us one thing that they will take away from the jam this week. But other than that, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us, because it wouldn't have been a jam without people to jam with.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're gonna kind of leave it there, I guess. It feels like we've rounded off a week of frenetic activity, but hopefully through some reflective spaces as well. And we look forward to having a chat with you online, and hopefully face to face at some point in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay.
I'll stop the recording now. If it works.
Chrissy says make some jam.
Well, it's weekend, so we can't go anywhere. Let's just make something.
We've got puppy preparation weekend this weekend. Puppy preparation, yeah. We're getting a puppy. Yeah, so we've always had
to have kids.
We had dogs before we had a kid, and we had a child. So
okay. That's okay. They're good companions.
Yeah, I can't be without a dog in the house.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much, Anna and Emma.
Thank you. Thanks, Chrissy.
Bye.
Bye.